Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. It's time for your wake-up call. This is a really quick article, but I thought it was worth mentioning since we just entered the fiscal year 19 for the government. And I'm not sure if some businesses go by fiscal years ending in September 30th and starting on October 1st, but I know, and probably most of you know, that the fiscal year is from October 1st to September 30th for the government. So it says here in FY 2018, debt is up 1,201,158,167,127 is how much the federal government borrowed this year in the good name of the American people, which equates to roughly $8,172 for every working American. So here it says, and you can see the story was published on the 1st of October, the federal debt increased by $1.271 trillion in fiscal year 2018, according to data released today by the Treasury. The total federal debt started the fiscal year at $20,244 billion, according to the Treasury, and finished the fiscal year at $21.516 trillion. The federal fiscal year runs from October 1st through September 30th. And you can see a chart here of how our debt has increased over time, going all the way back to 1977. And you may ask yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with this, why is it that in 77 we have such little debt compared to today? And this is what I think, okay? So you guys can research this a little bit. It would actually be really good for you to research this topic, because whenever you want to figure something out, all you have to do is follow the money. So if you take a look at 1977, we have very little debt. Well, why is that? Well, that's because we had, some people may ask, in 1977, and if people blame things on the Federal Reserve and things like that, some people may argue, well, the Federal Reserve was around 1913, all right? So why didn't we have so much debt in 77? Because the Federal Reserve had been running for, what, 60 years? 64 years by 1977? Why did we have so little debt? Well, you have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that we were in a system called the Bretton Woods system from 1944 to 1971, when Nixon took us off the gold standard. So when a currency is partially or fully backed by a gold standard, it's very difficult to print money out of thin air unless you're doing it fraudulently and not letting anyone know that you're actually printing more, which is what we started to do in 71 or prior to 71, and then got called out by the French, which is what ended up being the reason why President Nixon took us off the Bretton Woods standard, or as it was known, the gold standard. So having a gold-backed currency or a bimetal-backed currency prevents governments from being able to overspend or to spend too much, because there's only so much of the commodity that is backing that currency. Right? There's only so much gold. So even if the dollar was backed by 40% gold, which is what it was backed by during the Bretton Woods standard, was 40% gold to the dollar, there's still only so much gold in the world. So there's still only so many dollars that can be printed. So that puts a stranglehold on the government not to be able to spend as much as they've been spending since. And as you can see here, ever since that we were decoupled from gold as far as the dollar goes, you can see that the spending has only increased. Okay, it's only increased. And it has to increase. All right, the system is set up where more debt has to be introduced into your system every year. Every year, more debt has to be made because the, if debt is if we start destroying debt and bringing debt back, it'll collapse the system. So every year they have to borrow more and more. I don't know if you guys understood a word of what I just said, but I hope that someone, at least one person, gets something out of it. Okay, so carrying on. The 1.271 trillion in debt accumulated in fiscal 2018 made fiscal 2018 the eighth fiscal year in the last 11 in which the debt increased by at least $1 trillion. The $1.271 trillion increase in the federal debt was also the sixth largest fiscal year debt increase in the history of the United States. And you can see here how much our debt increased by on an annual basis. And you can see here starting in 2008 when we had our so-called recession or Great Recession was the first year that we had debt of over $1 trillion. And as you can see here, 2009 was massive, about $2.2 trillion. And so you can see how much we've been borrowing here lately. It's a lot. Okay, so here, the United States saw its greatest fiscal year increase in the federal debt in fiscal year 2009, which began on 1 October 2008 and ended on 30 September 2009. That year, the debt increased by $1.8 trillion in 2009 dollars, or approximately 2.2 trillion in constant August 2018 dollars. Wow, look at that, ladies and gentlemen. They're showing this right here. So we're looking at a 9-year span, okay? So they're saying that 9 years ago, in 2009, the purchasing power of $1.8 trillion is the same as today's purchasing power of $2.2 trillion. That's a lot. Wow. What is that? That's 20% easily. Yeah. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there were 155,542,000 people with jobs in the United States in August. That means that the 21 trillion in federal debt at the end of fiscal 18 equated to approximately $138,000 for every person in the country who's working. The 1.2 trillion increase in debt just in fiscal year 2018 alone equaled approximately $8,172 per worker. And that's where it ends, ladies and gentlemen. So it just gives you a pretty good idea. This was actually a pretty good article. I mean, got a few things out of it. It's just, get used to it, ladies and gentlemen, until the system resets, or whatever you want to call it, until the system crashes, resets, whatever the word is going to be, a soft crash, hard crash, whatever. Until that happens, this is going to keep happening. We're going to keep getting into more and more debt. Now, I want you to understand that when I say that the system needs to borrow more and more every year, I don't mean that, like, for example, this year we had a $1.2 trillion deficit. I don't mean that next year we have to have a 1.3 trillion or 1.4 trillion and keep going up. I mean this debt, our overall debt. We have to go into more and more debt every year. More debt has to be accumulated on top of previous debt every year. Or if not, the system will start and crash. Okay, because the system was made to where we have to borrow every year in order to be able to pay back interest and things like that. We have to borrow money into existence. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, having said that, ladies and gentlemen, this was a short wake-up call. Hope you guys are having a good Tuesday today. And I hope that you're having a good day the rest of the week. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow for another wake-up call. And until then, remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper, and I'm out.